So we're going to start, and I will speak in French, so I'll let people put headphones. Bonjour.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. My name is Melissa Camara. I'm an MEP, an ecologist from the Libe Committee, a member of the Intergroup to Combat Racism, and I'm particularly interested in issues of civil freedoms and migratory issues. We've decided with ECCHR, RFF and others to organize this press conference together with the Vice President of Volusia. There's a victim of controls at the German border with the new Schengen controls. And this case indicates a possible shift in racist actions and a deprivation of freedom. This is often the case for people crossing the border between France and Germany and everywhere in Europe today. And we cannot remain silent with this kind of drift. And that is why Ms. Lelouch has courageously decided to bring this case before the administrative courts in Germany. And I have Sandra Lelouch, Hanaa Hakiki, ECCHR, Laura Kuttler from GFF, a German organization for civic rights, and Emmanuel Achiri, who is here to moderate. They are with me here today. I will give the floor to Mr. Achiri, who's going to be moderating this press conference today. Thank you very much, Ms. Camara, for this introduction and for being here today. Good morning to everyone. I'll continue in English.
Achiri. I work for the European Network Against Racism, and we are happy to be here this morning to support Sandra Lelouch's case against the German government. Today, Sandra is filing a complaint against Germany to the administrative court in Stuttgart, challenging an illegal border control she was subjected to by the German police earlier this year, where police used violence, where she was detained and made to walk back to France. She's supported by colleagues from the legal organizations here from the GFF, based in Germany and in English known as the Society for Civil Rights, and the ECCHR, or the European Center for Constitutional and Human Rights, both based in Berlin, and also by my organization, ENAR, where she holds the position of vice chair. Sandra Lelouch is a journalist and human rights advocate. She came to France 10 years ago as a refugee from Syria and now has long-term residency. She has created award-winning documentaries while also working as a human rights defender for the civil society organization New Women Connectors based in the Netherlands, and is also on the board of the European Alternatives. Before I invite Sandra Lelouch to speak, I just want to clarify that she will not be sharing the details of that incident, that is the violent police stop. These details have already been shared with you, those of you who are online and those present using the QR code. There you can access all of the information, including details about the legal proceedings. More information about this can also be shared with you after this. At this juncture, I want to address, welcome Sandra Lelouch to address you as well. Thank you.
Thank you to the MP Melissa Camara for hosting this event, and thanks to all the civil society organizations, lawyers and journalists who are supporting us in this endeavor. Can you imagine for 1 second that every time you cross a border, you might be stopped by police, detained, violently handled, beaten, stripped naked, and made to feel like a criminal, simply because you are racialized? You know your rights, but for people like me, those rights suddenly mean nothing at European borders. Millions of people in Europe don't have to imagine this because it is our lived realities. It is our day-to-day life experience. We are criminalized simply for existing. It doesn't matter how much we contribute to our societies, how much good we bring to our communities, how deeply we integrate, or how fully we embody the values of human rights and the rule of law. Our daily experiences do not reflect those values. It shows us instead that these values are conditional on not being racialized. Even if you are born here, raised here, educated here, if you look like me, you are constantly reminded that you are a stranger, a suspect, and a potential criminal. But this is not what European Union was built on. And I refuse to believe that Europeans, our neighbors, our colleagues, our friends, even our partners and children, can accept this treatment of people they live and work with every day. And I refuse to believe that nothing can be done. I come from Syria. I grew up under a regime that used police and military power to oppress, to detain, and to torture those people who dared to say enough, who dared to challenge the power. I'm in exile because I was part of a revolution that demanded freedom, dignity, and the just rule of law to apply equally on all. But I never imagined that in Europe, in a place I thought I was safe, I would be treated by border police officers in ways that reminded me of what I have escaped. That the very abuses I fled would follow me here, to traumatize me and steal my sense of safety. So today, I stand before you to seek justice, to say enough. Enough unlawful checks, enough violence at the borders, enough dehumanization of racialized people in Europe. Today, with this lawsuit, I am saying enough not only for myself, but for everyone who has been subjected to state violence, humiliated, and treated as less than human. Together, let's end borders violence. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandra. At this point in time, I would also invite the representative from the GFF, who is leading this case against the German government. Laura Kuttler is a legal expert with the GFF. She works on strategic litigation around police powers and the rule of law and coordinates the legal strategy for Sandra Alouche's case. She will share a few notes with you now. Thank you.
Vielen Dank, Emmanuel.
Thank you very much, Melissa. We want to support Sandra's file. That was clear from the outset. What she experienced clearly shows what happens when a state makes illegal border controls a reality. It concerns the basis of the Schengen area, but also those who want to move freely around Europe. We are here in Strasbourg, and we can all be concerned, although it may affect, it often affects more people, some people more than others. We can see from this story what this means for people personally, professionally, and emotionally. And I'd like to briefly explain why this control should never have taken place. According to the Schengen Border Codex, there's a basic principle. Internal borders should not be crossed with personal checks. These checks should only be carried out if there's a serious threat to public order or domestic security, and then only as a last resort, because every control is an infringement of basic rights, freedom of movement or equal treatment. But the German Foreign Interior Ministry refers to internal security reports and to figures of too many illegal entries. But this is not an excuse. When the controls were introduced in 2024, these figures were actually decreasing and continue to decrease. And there are no preconditions for new controls. There are no new threats, and there's no proof of this by the Interior Ministry. The Bavarian Administrative Court in March 2025 also ascertained that Germany was violating the Schengen area rules because there were no additional threats. It is clear the control that Sandra underwent was illegal. It should not have happened. The ID control is actually a violation in itself, and the follow-up measures, that is, threats, violent being addressed, these were also illegal, and they were disproportionate. But Germany is still carrying out controls at all land borders on the Bavarian-Austrian border for 10 years now. This cannot be justified by any European law. The German government is ignoring the current law and case law. So it concerns Sandra, but we also have 2 other cases that we're working on. There is no way of countering this currently. As long as the Interior Ministry refuses to recognize European law and case law, we can only act on each individual control and check it and to ensure that decisions are taken seriously politically. We need to therefore make these cases visible and have these checked by lawyers. So that's why we are here. So we're here together with Sandra to make sure this happens together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. This case is also supported by the European Center for Constitutional and Human Rights, and here representing the ECCHR is Hanaa Hakiki, who is a lawyer and directress of the Border Justice team. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Good morning, everyone. We at the ECCHR have been working on the disregard of the law at European borders for the past 10 years. And with the disregard of the law comes increasing violence that we've witnessed. And what we've seen is that the situation is rapidly further deteriorating. And aside from the violence, what happens is that our governments across the political spectrum are entrenching a very dangerous state culture, one by which they make and implement long-standing decisions that clearly are in violation of fundamental laws, as just addressed by Laura. And then they go on to ignore court decisions that confirm the illegality of their measures. And every single citizen should be very worried about this new European state culture in which the rule of law means little, because this announces essentially the end of democracy. So we should all be very vigilant about what happens at our borders and what the police does there, if not for the migrants, for ourselves, for our future, and for our freedoms. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hanaa. The European Network Against Racism is also supporting this case because we do believe it's also a case of racial violence and racialization of European borders, and specifically in this case, the German border. And we have a report coming up on the racialization of European borders. This report will be out in February 2026, wherein we argue that racial profiling is systemic and a widespread practice at EU internal borders, as the case of Sandra demonstrates. According to this report, which was conducted at the France-Italy border, the France-Spain border, the German-Czechia border, the German-Austrian border, and parts of the Basque region, racialized people are disproportionately stopped, searched, humiliated, sometimes expelled, and subjected to violence without due process. Our findings would also show that police checks are often based on profiling, including skin color, appearance, and presumed nationality. For example, white European travelers without papers are waved through, while racialized travelers with valid IDs are asked for extra documentation. And we argue that this reflects a discriminatory regime of suspicion that polices who does and does not look European. But this racial profiling, we say, does not only occur at the borderline itself, it follows people into train stations, streets, and everyday life. And these borders therefore become embodied, and racialized people become permanently surveyed subjects. This is the case because migration governance increasingly in Europe acts as a proxy for racism. Also, border and policing powers have been expanded under laws like the reform of the Schengen Border Code and the new Asylum and Migration Pact. And these frameworks have created a permissive environment for racialized policing by giving officers broad discretion to stop anyone they deem irregular. Oftentimes, those deemed irregular are those who do not meet stereotypical and self-racialized imaginations of Europeanness, which in this case equates to whiteness. And this is why ENAR is supporting this case, because we do believe that Sandra's case is symptomatic of a wider and systemic practice of racial profiling at the EU borders. At this point in time, we would want to also invite members of the press for the next couple of minutes, for the next 10 minutes, to ask questions if they do have. For those who are online, they could also put the questions in the chat and would answer and would try to answer. So please, you're welcome to ask questions if you have any. Yes, please.
En français, c'est possible ou en anglais?
In French, is that okay? Indeed. Agence Europe. I just wanted to ask if anything can be done at a European level in order to tackle the situation.
Ich kann es von der rechtlichen
From a legal perspective, when it comes to borders, the Borders Code or border legislation, we can't sort of enter a lawsuit. I think there is a case concerning Luxembourg, and the Commission is acting, but what's happening at a political level, I don't know. But I think that case has been brought, but I don't know much more about it than that.
Ce que je peux vous dire sur le...
What I can say when it comes to border controls is that a number of colleagues have referred questions to the Commission. Article 25 permits these derogations when it comes to border controls, but until when we don't know. I don't know whether colleagues who have raised these issues have received a response, but they related to border checks at the German border.
From the European Court of Justice from 2022 against Austria, but these decisions are being ignored.
From an advocacy standpoint, we also do believe that this is why the report that ENAR will be launching in February 2026 is important, because we intend to then show political actors at the Commission, but also at the Parliament, the realities that have been engendered as a result of the reform of the Schengen Border Code. And so, of course, we'll be using this, and I'm sure working with Melissa's office and other political actors to put as much pressure as possible to ensure not only conformity with decisions by the European Court of Justice, but also the political willingness to have a different political climate which doesn't encourage this racialization and the violence at the borders. Thank you.
Peut-être pour rebondir.
Just to react quickly on the issue of controls and racial profiling, I think what's important to understand, as you were saying earlier, it's migration policies are something of a proxy for racist policies. There's work on the returns regulation currently underway. And in terms of the Commission's proposal, there is this issue that has to do with detecting or picking out people eligible for returns illegally present in the EU territory. So it is a case of racial profiling. So we have to bring political pressure to bear. We cannot accept this kind of migratory or migrations policy that leads to this kind of situation.
I would like to add to what my friends and colleagues said, that I'm counting on my fellow colleagues, journalists, to bring awareness to the dangers of these kind of practices if it's not challenged from the beginning. It is on us as press and media to lead these kind of discussions, to bring it to the public discourse, to inform European citizens of what is happening, because the videos that you see now in the United States of ICE dragging mothers and fathers and children from schools, beating them up in the streets, taking them to what it's concentration camps outside of the US where no one can reach them or legal process can be happening, it's going to come here in Europe soon. It started in France last year, and it's going to continue. If this is the countries that you want to live in, then you can stay silent and say nothing. If this is not the Europe that you want to live in, you and your children, then please speak out.
Thank you, Sandra. There's a couple of questions in the chat. Just want to reiterate as well that any questions regarding the details of the incident have been shared via the QR code to those in the room, and for those online. It's switched on here, so I'm not sure why. Is this one? Thank you. Yes, so just to clarify that the details regarding the incident are not going to be shared here. Any further information can be shared to journalists and to all others who are interested. But then there is another question around what consequences can court decision in single cases have for border controls in general. So I would leave that to those who would like to answer.
Ich kann mal beginnen.
Well, perhaps I can start. As I was saying earlier, I think the only possibility of doing anything in legal terms against these border controls is to bring cases before the courts. And the Bavarian Administrative Court took a decision earlier, and the Court of Justice in 2022 took a decision. I think we need to flag these issues politically, in saying that the border controls, as they're conducted, are illegal, and will continue doing that, at least in Germany, until the Ministry of the Interior revises its position, or until such point as the EU draws certain consequences from that.
All right, thank you. That's the last. Is there a question from the room? If there is no question from the room, there's a last question, and I think we have about 2 minutes to answer this. The question is around, can you explain or expand on what is currently happening in France? I guess this question relates to racialization processes at the border, so I'd also leave this open to...
Because you talk about France, but maybe you talk about the...
I was talking about the internal... So I was talking about last year's installation of checks on random checks, as they call it, the Interior Ministry, on racialized people, basically, to check if they have legal residencies, as they call it. So that started to happen last year.
Yes, just come back to that question. In France last year, the Ministry of the Interior, the Minister, Bruno Le Taillot, decided to organize days where in stations throughout France, but almost everywhere, the police were mobilized with a view to carrying out checks or controls, an instance of racial profiling, quite simply, to find people with racial profile illegally resident on French territory. It led to awful campaigns with the police being mobilized throughout France, stopping people, racialized people in the street.
To conclude as well, I would invite those of you who are interested to kind of like understand what is happening to watch out for ENAR's report that comes out in February 2026, because France is one of the case studies, not only the borders, but also what is happening, within the territory of France as well. That said, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Thank you again to Melissa Camara's office for hosting us, and for all of you journalists for joining in this morning. And until next time. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Happen at some